My name is Colin Hoffman, and I'm a sociology researcher specializing in what I call disparate communications. Now, disparate communications can be between cultures, societies, groups of people, nations, families, work cultures, even within the self, even between two people, the disagreements that can happen, and there are also intrapersonal disagreements and discoveries that may happen. Intrapersonal communication is anything that is happening within the self. I contend that a sense of place in the world and in the universe is akin and one with a sense of self. We have tools for self-discovery that apply not just to finding your own identity, your own personality, your own energy, your own roles in the world, but those same tools apply to all of the tiny minutiae that make us. We have so many small things that can define us, that we define ourselves by, that we define the world and the way we have our perspective with it. Such things can be examples of things like political ideology, your gender and sexuality, your expression, openness, extroversion and introversion, your roles as a family member, as a husband, a wife, a son, a father. As we go through the world, we also may find our roles as thinkers, as learners, as doers. All of these as well require a level of introspection and self-discovery where self-awareness will lead to this place. We do need relativity, though. I put it to you, and I use a metaphor that every person and every aspect of their personality identity within is like a constellation of stars, the stars with which we draw shapes with, that we connect the dots between. Some are very massive and have a lot of character and a lot of flavor, a lot of lines connecting all the things in our life. And as well as that, some people have a much simpler, just Orion's belt. If you can't pick out the entire Orion, Orion's belt is perfectly fine. We do need a sense of relative comparison, though, to find our sense of self in the world. These comparisons help give a sense of relativity, just like the North Star Polaris. It is always fixed at a north, relatively, within our lifetimes. It will be fixed in the night sky to give us a sense of relation on what is north. By association, what is south? Where are we? These self-discovery points are incredibly important to find the shape of us. It's very difficult to find your sense of place in the world when you don't know the shape of yourself. It's like having a block with a hole. You need to know the shape of the block just as much as the shape of the hole. They are one and the same. So if we are a single point in the night sky, a single star with nothing around it, this is an aspect of self-discovery. We don't quite know which way is up. We may not know which direction is north. We may not know whether this star is large, small, old, young, blue, red, any of those things without something to compare it to. Within our own personalities as well, we start getting comparisons by looking at the world around us. For many of us, this is the family life that we grew up with. We compare ourselves to our parents, to siblings, to our neighbors, to our friends, and as we grow older, to other people as well, co-workers, friends, teammates, celebrities, any other number of other stars and points in the night sky that you might have. When you start getting other points to compare yourself to, as a child, am I larger than my father or am I smaller than my father? This is a discrete sense of self-discovery. Discrete simply means more than, less than, on or off. It is a quite finite way of defining things. When you think of yourself, are you more conservative, more liberal than your parents? Are you taller, shorter than your siblings? Are you more, less open to new experiences than your coworkers or friends? Anything like that. We now have a sense to be able to find, ooh, am I to the left? Am I to the right? Is this star more red? Is this star more blue? Is it larger? Is it hotter? Is it colder? And even within the night sky, we can find our place in the world once we have something else to fix it to. Our Polaris, our North Star, anything that is relative, we now know our place relative to that. All of that is subjective. The more points and the more data we have, the more self-awareness and self-expression we have about our place in the world, and not just that, the way that the world sees us as well. As we gain tools for self-awareness and self-discovery, we can start measuring more things. This is what I would call measuring things in a spectrum. Rather than more than or less than, we can start to count. We can start to measure the space between stars, the spaces between people, how much larger they are than one another. We can measure temperatures. We can measure colors, things like that. Within the self, we may even know how much taller or shorter you are than your parents. You may know about, ideologically, how much more politically conservative, politically liberal, your sexuality in comparison to the peers around you, the people that you are intimate with even. These comparisons, we can now start having a spectrum. Rather than someone simply more than or less than, we can ask the questions of how much different are we? When we have these tools of measuring, we now have a sense of direction, and we have a sense of distance, a vector. The family that you grew up with, the neighborhood that you were around, the cultures you were raised in, the language you speak, the religion you were born into, are those the directions that you want to continue to go in your life? Traveling through the universe, is that going to be the direction you continue down? Or will you pick a different direction? What direction? How far do you want to go? Once we can measure these dialectic spectrums, we have a sense of vector, velocity, a lot of times even goals. For our aspirations, for our obligations, for our identities, anything like that, we now have a sense of how far I want to go, how fast I'm going, and how long it might take to get there. These questions of how much also come with an accompanying source. If you see a star out in the universe traveling north, a given north, it must have come from the south. Did something from the south expel it, explode it into that direction, or something from the north pulling it that direction? As we go through our lives, the direction you're going, is it getting away from something in the past, or is it going towards something in the future? Are they one and the same? These are fantastic questions that never have right answers. To be able to ask yourself, check in at any points in your life when you may feel unsure, when you may feel very sure. That's an especially great time for self-check-ins. When times are changing, when you may want them to change, even if things have become stagnant. When we do have these directions, these speeds, these vectors, our goals, our aspirations, everything that we want to be, everything we don't want to be, we now have a deterministic sense of self-discovery. We can determine how often we see the moon fully lit in the night sky. Every 28 days, we can predict it. We can determine this. We can determine the length that it takes for the Earth to make a rotation around itself, the length of time it takes for us to get to the same spot all the way around the sun itself. This deterministic discovery is absolutely invaluable because we now know what directions we want to go and what patterns may be evident in our travels, in observations, in ourselves. Were my parents very strict with me? Well, I may be very lenient with my children. If I was very lenient to them, they may give their children more structure. These patterns of human behavior have an ebb and flow to them, just like traveling north, traveling south. I can arbitrarily choose to travel east for approximately 25,000 miles. I end up right where I had started. Have I gone nowhere? Or have I traveled 25,000 miles? Or am I 25,000 miles wiser? All of these tools and all of these questions can apply not just to the self as a whole, but to all of our personality identity demographics within us as a person of color, as a Native American, as a black man, as a white man, as a husband, as a father, as a sister, as a Christian, as a Hindu, as a Buddhist, as an athlete, as a thinker, as a doer, as a learner, as a lover, as a provider, as a citizen. Any particular role, any particular star you choose to have bright in your sky, bright in your constellation, can be something that you go on these self-discovery questions about. They also can change. For many people, we can often self-identify the things most dear to us that are integral to our identity. These vast constellations are just as unique as a child drawing lines between the stars. They can be anything you want them to be. You can omit certain stars. You can have certain stars attaching to everything in this shape of you. These identity demographics, these groups, these roles, these interactions that we have with ourselves, with the people that know us, with the world at large, can be as bright, can be as integral as we choose them to be. There are some people, one block away, you know exactly what they believe politically, who they voted for, and they want you to know it. There are some people in a room you'll never have to ask their sexuality or gender identity because it is just that loud, that integral, not just to them, but bright and visible to everyone outside of them. Sometimes we may run into other people or even discover within ourselves that personality identity demographics do not apply. Maybe you do not see, you're looking at a different corner of the sky where political ideology is a dead star, is a black space in the night sky. I do not care. It does not define me. It's not something I use to identify myself, nor has a place in my shape in the world. Same thing with race, religion, ideologies, sexualities, gender identities and expressions, anything like that. As we discover them, we will find if they may be on the fringe of our personality, if they are very center, if they are integral to many things outside of us. Perhaps my political ideology also drives my education, and that also drives my friend group. That also drives the intimate partners that I choose. That also starts to determine my roles in the workforce and as a citizen. And that may be very integral and very dear to me. It also may be completely dead, null and void, and absent in your constellation of how you identify yourself, how vibrant you want your identity. So this comes down now to choice. We have the knowledge of self-discovery. We have the knowledge that many of these things can, most likely will, change over time. Maybe they are in orbit and they change back. This leads us to the choices that we have. The more we know ourselves, the more we know our place in the universe and our relations to it, the more choice and empowerment we have over ourselves. We can choose what parts of our personality to discover deeper. We can choose what parts of our personality to burn brighter. We can choose which ones to leave behind. As you look up into the night sky, as you turn that inner eye inward, however you want to view it, do you start to find the constellations that your parents had passed down to you? Do you start to find the same ones that you had looked up with mom and dad in the night sky and picked out? And you carry on those traditions, those inheritances? Do you start forging new ones? Do you turn in a completely different hemisphere of the sky to find your constellation, your path of stars? Observing our stars, knowing our stars, and changing our stars gives us at the same time a sense of place that truly is a sense of self.